but it does look like there is an agreement on a 21-point plan, which is basically a pacification plan that is deeply corrupt for Gaza. Most Israelis want to end the war. Netanyahu has been weakened, but he's accepting it, at least tentatively, and a Gaza International Board of Peace will be established with Trump at the top. At the bottom are like low-level Palestinian and Arab technocrats, and Tony Blair is supposed to oversee the Provisional Authority, so he becomes the new L. Paul Bremer of the Gaza
Somebody was
Strip.
like, oh, was Satan
Hamas
not available?
Members are given safe passage, basically, to leave. Who's a Hamas member? Hamas won Palestinian Palestinian legislative elections back in 2006. So anyone who voted for them that would be kind of a form of voluntary migration. And Gaza City is still being destroyed as we speak. And Trump has stated that if Hamas refuses this deal, basically he's made them an offer they are not allowed to refuse, and Israel has full authority to totally destroy them. There is a withdrawal plan.
Kind of sounds like
Israel
the Godfather type.
By. Can Trump enforce it? I doubt it. And that, according to Trump, Arab and Muslim countries will be dealing with Hamas, meaning Egypt and countries that are very hostile to them. So they will be pitted against Hamas. Again, I wish I had more time to assess this. Netanyahu. Last point is Netanyahu seems a little disappointed, and there are rumors filtering out of the White House that Trump sees Netanyahu as politically weakened, and we've talked for months and months and months about how any ceasefire, however temporary, I mean, if it lasts for 60 days or more, would unravel Netanyahu's coalition. And Smotrich and Ben-Gvir have already condemned this deal, and Ben-Gvir has condemned Netanyahu for apologizing to Qatar for the recent attack, which obviously he was forced to do as part of this deal. So he's weaker than ever.
And will his government collapse?
It's possible.
I mean, we've been waiting for that
make an
for
assessment
a while now.
I think his government could collapse upon implementation if he actually forces the military out in a way that does not provide the religious nationalist settler camp with the new Gush Katif style settlements that they're seeking. Remember, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, said that the final solution for Gaza is actually a real estate deal, and it's going to be Jews-only real estate. So Netanyahu is in peril
Jews only,
now,
baby.
And obviously Trump is frustrated with him. Trump has also made some bizarre comments about how Iran could join the Abraham Accords.
I'm sure Netanyahu loved hearing that.
Yeah, right, dude.
Well, I mean, it would only happen after
Exactly. It would only happen if Netanyahu got his wish. If Iran joined the Abraham Accords, that would be them normalizing with Israel, and that would only happen if there's some sort of coup. That's immediately what I thought.
Government, Islamic Republic was destroyed, and there was regime change because Iran would never join the Abraham Accords and submit to Israel, which is what the Abraham Accords is about. So all these problems, and we're going to know, I think, in 72 hours whether all sides actually are able to agree to this. Hamas agreed a week ago. Again, they've been agreeing to this since at least May of 2024. But this time they openly agreed to return all hostages in exchange for several conditions which had supposedly already been agreed upon. So Hamas is demonstrating enormous flexibility. And again, this is after Netanyahu tried to kill their entire negotiating team in Qatar.
What is your take?
It's a common theme, by the way. Hamas always agrees, especially after some devastating thing that happens to them. Bargaining from a position of power. They're completely, encircled. They don't have any advantage in this. They're being dominated by an imperial super force, the Death Star. Like they want to stop. They want a ceasefire. They want their people to stop being massacred and slaughtered by Israel, but that's not what Israel wants. When I learned through Norman Finkelstein's book that in 2009, after Operation Cast Lead, that Hamas agreed to whatever Israeli, a two-state solution, if you will, like as long as, we'll accept anything, in other words, as long as we just have our rights. And it's a big lie when they say that Hamas doesn't agree to anything. They're belligerent. They did the same thing to the PLO. That was a complete lie too.
Take on the meeting that you and Scott Ritter and Jeff Sachs and I and about 25 or 30 others had with President Pezeshkian of Iran last Wednesday.
Well, this was like a press conference for anti-war figures. There were activists there, there were journalists, there were pundits, and very broad panoply politically was represented there. And Pezeshkian wanted to speak to the American public through us rather than speaking to...
I think that Hamas is probably the only entity in the world that is not infiltrated by Mossad. In a certain sense, we can also extend it to the Gaza Strip. Gaza is the only place in the fucking world that Israel doesn't occupy. They're on the front lines for us. Now, Zionists will twist that and say, oh, well, you just said that they were occupied. Now you're saying that they're the only place not occupied. But again, words can have different meanings. Obviously, I'm speaking metaphorically, culturally.
The Trump administration, which cannot really be moved in his view at this point because it is so subservient to Israel. As Tucker Carlson's sources in the Middle East have been saying, Netanyahu's boasting about how he has Trump under his thumb. So Pezeshkian...
Which, for some reason, Netanyahu seemed to urgently bring up in his Fox News interview. Again, apropos of nothing, prompted by nothing, he produced the criticism that Max just shared with us about Netanyahu bragging that he's controlling Trump, which every time Netanyahu feels the need to pipe up and defend himself, it makes him look more guilty. Thank you, Dr. Susan, for the $50 super chat. That's so awesome of you. Palestine is ethnically Levantine. Original language is Aramaic. That's right. Jesus spoke Aramaic, if I remember correctly. Imperialized by Arabs in 7th century, just as Mexicans aren't Spanish but Spanish. Palestinians aren't Arab, just Arab speakers. The GCC is ethnically Arab and always conspire against Palestine. Do you mean the GCC is the Gulf Coast countries? Or the Gulf, I guess I'm taking that to mean Gulf states. When we start talking about 7th century is when I usually check out of the conversation. The veracity of your statements notwithstanding, they could be completely true, it could be completely not true. The point is that there are people living there right now, and they have been, and they've been extirpated from their land by a genocidal settler colony, and that's happening post World War II, which is the pivotal time in world history where international institutions were forged in the wake of the last great atrocities. Literally, World War II was the worst human event in world history, claiming something on the order of 60 million lives. And we have institutions forged that were created to prevent these well-known and well-documented crimes against humanity. So I can't speak to the 7th century. Nobody alive today existed in the 7th century. Everybody that lived in the 7th century is dead. And in the 21st century, I can say that people are being killed in an entire civilization, whether you like it or not, whether you think it has legitimacy or not, it exists. The Palestinian people do exist. And if they exist and they're afforded their right to self-determine, they're afforded their right to have a nation, have national and political rights. End of story. You know, it's always illegal to occupy land. It doesn't matter what ideology you use to justify it, what supremacist ideology you use to justify it. It's always wrong. And it has nothing to do with the 7th century. Yeah, Gazans are actively recruited by Mossad. I'm not saying that they're not, but you're trying to painted a picture in people's heads that, you know, it's just everything that the Palestinians offer up and to resist the occupation is only compromised. And I understand that to a certain extent it's true that, you know, Netanyahu had apparently funneled money via Qatar, and he's on record as saying, you know, we need to fund Hamas in order to break the PLO. That's a constant theme that has never changed since the beginning of Israel. They've always sought to divide the Palestinians, and specifically via breaking up the administrative powers and pitting them against each other. This is a well-known tactic of settler colonialism. When you want to an indigenous society, you have to pit them against each other too, you know? I mean, we do this around the world. This is U.S. foreign policy. Core objective number one is to foment color revolutions and arm reactionary dissidents and fascist coups. But I reject the characterization that Hamas is anything but an authentic struggle for self-determination, and seeing their leaders dying in the streets, being targeted by drones, okay? They've got a lot of skin in the game, okay? okay? I think we should give them their proper respect and not try to paint Hamas as some corrupt institution. No, the corrupt institution is Israel, the Israeli government. And we're not here to blame third world armed resistance groups for fighting against illegal occupation in whatever capacity they can muster.
Warned in that meeting that war is coming. He said for sure they will attack again, referring to Israel and presumably the U.S. And he even grimly forecasted his own, another attempt on his own life, and stated that Iran has prepared 5 to 6 steps ahead of every contingency, including the elimination of its elected president. The reason the meeting was held was Iran expects war at any moment. Just talking to contacts inside Iran, they're all expecting it. Many were expecting it sooner, but they feel like the snapback sanctions, which were hypocritically imposed by the E3, 3 European countries that were part of the P5+1, after the U.S. ripped up the deal, the JCPOA, that the snapback sanctions were really the trigger for another potential war. Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, has told TASS, the Russian wire service, that he is hearing from his own sources that Israel's preparing for a war on Iran. And this might be a way for them to blow up the 21-point plan in Gaza, for Netanyahu to shore up his coalition. At the same time, Lavrov has said that his sources, and Israeli media has also said this as well, echoing Pezeshkian in our own meeting, the war will be more violent, and Iran's government is much stronger than Israel understood during the 12-day war. And Pezeshkian said that his society, he's a reformist president, he represents sort of the urban middle class, and that wants a more socially liberal society. And he has been more critical of the Islamic Republic than previous presidents. And he stated that even harsh critics in Iran and opponents of the Islamic Republic united around the flag and behind the military because Israel killed so many civilians, and they were so offended by the unprovoked nature of that attack. And what that really means is
that is a really revealing point that you can make, and you can tie in to historical and dialectical materialism, because it's true. The Iranians, much like other cultures and nationalities, unite under the banner of indigenous nationalism when they are attacked by a foreign outsider. And whatever class warfare is domestic inside of Iran, those contradictions, which are antagonistic, do subside for the time being. This is something that Mao talks about in his writings, that it's perfectly logical, right? You unite under the flag of your common heritage and culture and nationality when you are faced with a common enemy. And you almost think that Netanyahu is trying to jump the gun or put the cart before the horse, you know, when he's trying to foment a color revolution and trying to get the Iranians to revolt against their own government. No, what you did is you made them stronger. You actually solidified and entrenched that contradiction. And the other, like, whatever, you know, class distinctions that were happening in that country subside for the time being.
Is that Israel, in attempting this surprise attack, forfeited its ultimate objective of destabilizing Iranian society to the point where they actually achieve regime change and the streets become uncontrollable. And so Iran has a political advantage there going into what appears to be the next round of a more violent conflict.
Forgive me if we've covered this before. Why did the Israelis bomb a prison, an Iranian prison? Was it an accident, or was there some diabolical purpose to killing prisoners and the people visiting them?
Probably the latter.
No, that's a great question, and it connects directly to the last point I made. Israel bombed Evin prison, and they thought, I mean, this is like the most extreme neoconservative delusional thinking. They thought by bombing this prison that they would send a message to the part of Iranian society that opposes the Islamic Republic, that Israel stands with them and wants to actually liberate the prisoners in Evin prison, who many of them are sort of considered political prisoners, including people who have attempted to foment regime change, as well as dissidents. And it's always harshly condemned by the human rights industrial complex. So Israel bombed the gates, thinking they would send a message and that it would lead people into the streets.
See?
Instead, what they wound up doing was not only killing many prisoners, killing social workers, killing prison guards, killing families who were there to visit their dissident family members.
The
and
arrogance.
They wound up facing the harshest consternation from some of the loudest voices supporting regime change, like Narges Mohammadi, condemning Israel for doing that. So it completely backfired. And this really speaks to the delusional thinking that animates Israel's war on Iran. There won't be a regime change war this time. It will be a war in which Israel seeks to drag the U.S. more deeply into this conflict, which could lead to global economic disaster, with the Strait of Hormuz being closed. And again, they think they have Trump under their thumb.
Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to the page to help it grow. And if you'd like to support my work, join my Patreon for exclusive content.